What's up? It's your boy, Marten Cordial. And we doing what we always do, which is improvised short stories, live streamed for your pleasure. And today we're gonna do like a sequel, I think, or like some kind of a continuation of something we've started before. I tell you, we've done some ripper stories, mate, already. River of Chocolate Dreams, that was the first one. That was an instant classic. This is the original Jackson Spaceboots story, which is like a science fiction adventure romp. And that's what we're going to be continuing today. So Jackson, if you don't remember, she's an ass kicker. She's a doer of things. Actually, I think of her as sort of a Doctor Who type. Sort of a 10th Doctor feel of, going out and making some moves, pulling some moves on some, alien fellas. But also having like some kind of sense of bad shit in the past, been through a time war or two is the vibe I get from Jackson Spaceboots. Welcome, Rega, to the stream. And so in this first Jackson Spaceboots episode, she crash landed, as is her wont. And we learned about her background and her personality. She's pretty keen on the more high velocity style of space flight, as opposed to the safer corporate speed. Welcome, Hadass. And she has this like little robot man on her ship called 24. I'm not sure if he's gonna reappear. But yeah, she crash landed on this weird planet last time. That was cool, but this time she's gonna crash land on another planet. So we're gonna call this one, this new Jackson Spaceboot story, we're gonna call it Jackson Spaceboots 2. Electric Boogaloo is too obvious. We'll decide what to call it later. But it's gonna start, as it always does, with Jackson crash landing. So let's start. So Jackson Spaceboots, or let's just say Jax. That's the nickname. Jax was no longer in control. Hold on. Jax was no longer in control. She knew that now. There was no, that's not a no. Like I was thinking, like you could say, like, oh, there was a point when she was in control of the descent, and when she wasn't, but it's ambiguous when that point is, or something like. Oh, nah. Jax was screaming towards the alien moon. She found herself strangely. Jax was screaming towards the alien moon and felt strangely calm. To be sure, she'd survived more crash landings than most. To be sure, she'd survived more crash landings than most pilots perform actual landings. She was pretty well experienced with the process. Welcome to the stream, Mosimosa. Jax was screaming towards the alien moon and felt strangely calm. To be sure, she had survived more crash landings than most pilots perform actual landings. She suspected she was actually better at crash landing. There's so much to remember with what's the right word? Planned landings as opposed to crash landings, with controlled landings. There's so much to remember with controlled landings. Retract the flight wheels. Turn off the AC. Choose a safe landing zone. Tell the passengers to buckle up. It's too much to handle. Crash landing, conversely, is a far quicker process. Much less decision making involved. Mostly suggests putting the wheels out to land on. Yeah, alright, maybe that's true. I suppose you wouldn't have the wheels out while you're flying through space, would you? So what's the right word for putting out the flight wheels? Extending the flight wheels? Deploying the flight wheels is probably right. I suspect that this sci-fi spaceship... I suspect that sci-fi spaceships probably don't land on wheels as a general rule. But, I mean, this is an old-fashioned ship that Jax uses, so we can roll with that. Jax was screaming towards the alien moon. We should probably say Jax's ship was, but I don't know, this is cool. Because I think obviously this is a bit of a metaphor for how Jax is handling her life in terms of the crash landings. Jax was screaming towards the alien moon and felt strangely calm. To be sure, she had survived more crash landings than most pilots perform actual landings. She suspected she was better at crash landing. There's so much to remember with controlled landings. Deploying the flight wheels, turning off the AC, choosing a safe landing zone, tell the passengers to buckle up. It's too much to handle. Crash landing, conversely, is a far quicker process. Much less decision making involved. So long as you survive, you've performed a successful crash landing. And so far, Jax has a 100% success rate. Alright, I dig that. Mosa says they're super space wheels. Yeah, now they got like, ultra titanium rubberized space minium to line the wheels, so it's all cool. Yeah, that's also true. Mosa says that, since she's in the habit of crashing, it makes sense that she doesn't have a fancy new ship. I think Jax is an independent. I think Jax is technically unemployed. She has her own ship that she's sort of patched together, her own little Millennium Falcon. Maybe it is stolen from somewhere. Maybe she stole this ship from her employer. I think that would be a very Jax sort of a backstory. All right, let's indulge in a shameless reference. Jax read an old book. Jax read an old book. Jax learned everything she needed to know about flying from an old book. It said that the secret... Everything about flight. from an old book. It said that the secret to flying was to throw yourself at the ground and miss. Which is a shameless reference to The Hitchhiker's Guide. Jax learned everything she needed to know about flight from an old book. It said that the secret to flying was to throw yourself at the ground and to miss. Jax reasoned that spaceflight was even easier. In space, there's so much to miss. In space, there's so much to miss. Just hurtle in the direction of your choosing. There's so much to miss. Spaceflight is just a whole... Spaceflight is just falling. With no up or down. Spaceflight is just falling. The trick is to miss in the right direction. I don't know. That needs to be redone, but that's alright. This time, however, Jax is not without concerns. I don't know, like the voice of the writing is you know, it's describing ridiculous circumstances in like a serious, matter of fact, dry tone, which I suppose is just stolen from The Hitchhiker's Guide, probably. But there are other ways you could write this, couldn't you? Like, you could try to do it in a more, I don't know what the right term is, a more, you know, less tongue-in-cheek and more just like genuinely, oh, this is wacky, guys. I don't know, we could try playing with the voice, but I guess this is working so far. This time, however, Jax is not without concerns. She's run the numbers. Judging by the numbers on her nav dash, that's what they'd call it. Judging by the numbers on a nav dash, there wasn't much room to miss this moon. There's a little rhyme for all your hip hop fans. Welcome Advar to the chat. Judging by the numbers on a nav dash, there wasn't much room to miss this moon. It was huge and white and filling up her, what's the term for the front window? You know, the windscreen, you know, what do we call that? It was huge and white and inescapable, just like my last wife. I don't know, we'll find a better phrasing for that. Mosa has questions about continuity. Yeah, we're actually crashing on a different planet this time. So we're not directly continuing the previous Jackson Spaceboots story. She's actually crash landing on a different place now, as is her habit. Maybe every Jackson Spaceboot story starts with her crashing somewhere. We'll find out. Yeah, HUD is good, Adver. Yeah, I suppose her nav dash is on her HUD. I think the HUD is for like the numbers and the bars and like the all the stuff around the display. I don't know. Whatever. We'll work that out. There wasn't much room to miss this moon. It was huge and white and inescapable. Normally, Jax would look for a body of water or a particularly soft-looking rock, soft-looking, I don't know, hill. But this moon appeared appeared featureless, without sea or sand or mercy. There's something pretty sounding. She couldn't reason with a giant white rock. She couldn't outsmart it. So she was going to have to what's a good term for, like, you know, surviving it by physical force alone, like being more tough than it? How do we express that? She was going to have to just be stronger than it, to outfight it, to outweigh it, to what's the right term here? She was going to have to outmuscle this giant rock. She was going to toughen up and hope. Something like that. She remembered an old game she played with brother. What's Jackson Spaceboots' brother named? Dmitri. Is she Russian? I don't know. Ruslov. Why are we go? All right. Let's. How about Zachberg. Trackheim. Let's get something that's a name. Jonesy. No, that's the name of the cat in Alien. That's why. Dmitri Spaceboots. Dmitri Spaceboots would be quite a name. Thomas, Mosa suggests. We used Thomas in one of the other stories, I think. Thomas was in the school one at Lionhead High. What's a good name? What's something space related? I mean, Leica is always fun. What's a male version of Leica? Leicanon. Laertes. Yeah, let's Larry. What's an L name? What's a male L name? Lewis. Spacey McSpaceface. All right, we're brainstorming. No wrong answers. Do we want to spell Lewis with two L's just to be indie about it? Dirk is good. Dirk is fun. But then I'm just gonna think Dirk Gently. And that's gonna color the character. Lewis. I kind of like Lewis. Lewis is like an actual name. And it can be shortened to Lou, which I think is a good nickname. And I bet Lewis hates it when Jax calls him Lou. So, yeah, let's go Lewis. She remembered an old game she played with her brother Lewis. In the winters back home, what's a kind of tree that is made up? How about the How about the spice elm? I think spice elm is fun, but it's maybe not the right vibe we're going for. How about the green sticks? Nope, let's not call them green sticks. In the winters back home, the autumn fields. In the winter, how can it be autumn in winter? In the winters back home, the meadows filled with brown seed pods, about the size of why is eyeball the thing that I'd think of? Welcome Kelly to the stream. Silver Meadows. Ooh, spicy. Yeah, no, let's go Silver Meadows. That gives it a bit of a sort of alien, sort of exotic vibe. Furrowed furs. I like furrowed furs, Mercer. Furrowed means like marked or like plowed or like creased or like that's sort of what furrowed means, doesn't it? Pine cones. Yeah, we're going for some pine coney sort of seed pod, I think. About the size of pine cones. Yeah, no, we can do that. Well, no, I think that's slightly too large for what we're going to do with them. So about the size of, I'm thinking like in between the size of an eyeball and like an apple or a pine cone, something in between. So maybe you'd call that maybe small enough to fit inside your fist is the right descriptor of the size of these things. Pine cones are of various sizes, Advar points out. True. So are eyeballs, if you want to be technical. In fact, most things come in multiple sizes. So it's hard to describe how big it should be. See, isn't this fun, the nitty-gritty of trying to write something? Alright, so brown seed pods. Do we even have to say how large they are? Probably, but an egg. That's kitten heads. That's dark. Let's go with eggs. About the size of, egg is very... Alright, we're gonna, about the size of eggs. That feels a bit silly. Alright, look, the Silver Meadows filled with brown seed pods. We're not even going to say how big they are because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how big the seed pods are, guys. In the winters back home, the Silver Meadows filled with brown seed pods. Jax and Lou would collect them and pile them on the living room floor. Their mother would fuss. Their mother would fuss and ask what they thought they were doing. Their mother would fuss and ask what all the mess was for. Their mother would them on the living room floor. Their mother would ask what the mess was for. Their mother would ask what the mess was for. And Jax would reply. To see which is stronger. Jax and Lou would each choose a seed pod. Jax and Lou would each choose a seed pod, and crush them against each other, and crush each pod against the other until one broke. A third pod the victor would then contend against a third pod, and so on until a single surviving pod reigned supreme over the mulchy mess of its competitors. And of course, whichever sibling first chose the winning pod was deemed the more erudite of pod selectors. There's simple ways to say things. Oh boy. But all right, you see what we're getting at here, though, right? So this is the old Eminem copy paster. This is crushing the pods against each other over and over to find what the single remaining pod was. That makes sense, right? Advar says there's a game just like that with eggs. That would be a lot messier. And you'd have to make a really big omelet afterwards, eh? Rhaegar says she's glad we didn't go with kitten heads. Because that truly would be awful. Mosa says, back where it says hope, you could change it to hope her pod was stronger. Where does it say hope? I don't think it says hope. We'll work it out later. And the point, well, part of the point of why we bring that up now is that Jax plummeting towards the moon. Jax did not feel. Jax felt she was likely the weaker seed pod. So Jax feels like she's facing her death right now, but Jax has probably faced worse, I would say. So how does she feel in these final moments bearing down towards this moon? Probably she just focuses on survival is probably what she does. Jax felt she was likely, or she can think about her brother, because I think Jax's whole sort of dark thing is that she feels regret and guilt over her dead brother, or her brother who was perhaps, if not dead, at least gone. Well, spoilers, but I think what we were thinking of getting to in the previous Jackson Spaceboots story was that this little robot called 24 is her brother in some form. Like, I think her brother has lost his body, he's died in some sense, but his mind lives on in a little robot. And that's who Jax was carrying with her in her spaceship. I don't think she's got 24 on her spaceship now. I don't know, this is a different continuity or something. Whatever. But I think that's what the vibe we're getting at in terms of Jackson's relationship with her brother. Advar says that was a beautifully convoluted metaphor. Great, that's what we're going for. He was... Yeah, Mosa suggests that he was crippled and he couldn't be a pilot, but his brain is still in there. Yeah, maybe Lewis's dream was to be a pilot like Jackson, but because of some accident that Jax might have had some role in, Lewis was prevented from being a human pilot like he wanted to be but in some sort of guilty consolation, Jax instead offered Lewis a place as a sort of navigational computer robot boy, and that's sort of what he is or was in that last story. Yeah, I think that could be the sort of that could be the situation. Orega says maybe she lost him in a crash. I think Jax wouldn't be as gung ho about crashes if she'd lost her brother in a crash, or maybe she is. Maybe it's like this destructive thing that she does anyway. We'll work up to that, I think. But yes, all right. So the point is, we're gonna get there, guys. We're screaming towards the moon, and we're gonna get there. How many words is this? This is 365 words. That's a lot of words for not a lot of crashing. We're gonna get there, guys. Plummeting towards the moon. Jax felt she was likely the weaker seed pod. But she'd never admit it. She'd never admit till it was over. And even then, maybe not. So, Jax is stubborn and resilient, perhaps to her own detriment. Jax felt she was likely the weaker seed pod, but you never admit that. But you never admit that till it was over, and even then. And maybe not even then. Still, yeah, whatever. Had to be. There had to be a way out. Alright, I don't know what to do in between the bit when she's crashing and the bit when she's crashed. But alright, here's what we're gonna do. There was no time to think. No time to regret. There was no time to rethink, no time to regret. How do you gret in the first place? Like, when you regret, you're doing it a second time, right? How does one gret in the first place? Maybe if people were able to gret, then they wouldn't have to regret. If they just gretted properly in the beginning, then you'd avert the need for a regret. There's something to think about. There was no time to rethink, no time to regret. The surface of the moon the surface of the moon came crashing up into Jackson's face. And somehow, she didn't die. There was a noise like the furious flapping of birds. Feathers. There you go. There's a bit of what's it called? Not assonance, but the other one. Furious flapping of feathers. Sucker and succotash. I like that. There was a noise like the furious flapping of feathers. There was a storm. There was a furious storm of flapping feathers. There was, well, you see what we're getting at. There was a noise like the furious flapping of feathers all around Jackson's ship. The whole ship shook and trembled and rolled, and Jackson's limbs and hair went a-flailing. That's a word. Went a-flailing. The screens... What? The screens were all a blur of white. And then they came to a shuddering stop. Welcome, Brandon. We have just crashed a spaceship. You've come at the perfect time. So this is Jackson Spaceboots, who we've written a story about before, or we started writing a story about before. Now we've started a new one. So Jackson has been in the process of crashing her spaceship into this great white moon. Ooh, Moby Dick influence, maybe. Let's remember, maybe this is Jackson's Moby Dick. And she's pretty chill about the whole crash landing thing, except this particular crash seems a little more concerning than the others. She doesn't see a way out of this one. But, you know, Jax sort of waxes philosophical about flight and throwing yourself into situations. And Jax is not able to outsmart this particular crash, and she reminisces about her past, her brother Lewis, who seems to be gone out of her life now, but who she was remembering fondly. And the point is that she thought she was gonna die crashing into this moon, but somehow she didn't. And there's been this flurry of white, and now we're gonna find out what happened. For a few moments, Jackson sat and breathed. Shook and shuddered and rolled. And for a few moments, Jackson sat and breathed. She checked to see if all her parts were attached. Did we see the same thing last time? I feel like we might have made the similar sort of cute comments about seeing if parts are attached last time. Let's just quickly check if we did the same thing last time, because that would be a bit... Yeah, no, literally the same. I must have like subconsciously seen it. Okay, so we've already done the bits attached bit. She gave her body parts a tender no, not tender. What's the when you're hesitant to do something? She made she gingerly poked each of her limbs and found none of them broken. For a few moments, Jackson sat and soaked in the adrenaline. When she was sure she was finished crashing, she gingerly poked each of her limbs. It seemed that nothing was broken. Yeah, tentative. Yeah, tentative was the word I was trying to think of. Yeah, how is she breathing? Brandon suggests. It seems that nothing was broken. Her lungs were still. Her lungs were still. She could still breathe. One lung and another. Yes, that's right. She was unscathed. Or only mildly scathed. She was unscathed, or mildly scathed. At most. There's something really fun about making the writing just as needlessly complicated as it can. I find great pleasure in just making it just. All right. Yeah. All right. So we're suggesting in the chat, we're suggesting some degree of injury is a good idea. Yeah. All right. We can do that. I mean, so what? I mean, what's the most probable injury one would get in such a spaceship crash? I mean, it'd probably be like whiplash or something, right? Or some awful spinal situation. Well, I guess the seat belts would be pretty good, wouldn't they? All those cushioning gels. I don't know. We'll decide on injury later. She's not dead. That's the important part. The question was how. She looked at the window. There's a better term than window, but whatever. She looked at the window and saw a jumble. She looked at the window and saw a jumble of white. A jumble of small white shapes. I don't know. There's a better description of that. We'll get to it. The question was how. She looked at the window and saw a jumble of small white shapes. Oh, we're doing past tense, aren't we? I kind of like doing present tense. I don't know why. But I like writing in present tense. This time we're doing past tense, I guess, so we can roll with that. This wasn't rock. The surface of the moon had given way beneath her. It had cushioned her. But what was it? Jackson unbuckled and Jackson unbuckled and looked Mosa suggests it's cheese. That's an option. Advar says the present tense is a bit douchey sometimes. Yeah, that seems to be the consensus. I mean, yeah, it seems to be something that's sort of like just like wanky people do just for the sake of being different and making it seem a bit fancier. Which is, I don't know, it's a shame. I'm sure there are good reasons one way or another. But I just like present tense because it feels like it's happening as opposed to it happened, which makes it feel more engaging in some sense. But I'm sure there's some really good reason why everyone does it in past tense. Viewports, they're called in Star Wars. Viewports is pretty 80s, I reckon. Although Jackson Spaceboots is also probably pretty 80s. Anyway, so Jackson unbuckled and looked with distrust at the ship's. Alright, door is a bit unspacey, isn't it? What do they call it in those space shows? Is it the airlock or the I think airlock is a bit more technical than we're willing to go with Jackson Spaceboots. We're not calculating any velocity differentials. Yeah, hatch is good, Brandon. Exit hatch. Door hatch. Disembarkment aperture. Let's call it that. No, all right. The ship's hatch. What was on the other side? Whatever this moon's made of had just saved her. If she opened the door, would it kill her? Jax had encountered some truly nasty has chems in her time. Let's zoom in. Can you go? Is the text size big enough, guys? Because we can like increase it or decrease it if it's easier to see. Although I don't know. I don't really know what the Marten Cordial viewing experience is like. Is this something that you just sort of like leave on in the background? It would be. You just sort of like and just like listen to the audio. Like how many of you are seeing the text? And how many of you are just sort of like leaving it in the... And also, like, would this make sense? Like, this is more a live stream than a podcast, isn't it? Like, no one would, like, sit and listen to, like, an hour of just this audio. It's a participatory thing, isn't it? Yeah, feel free to chuck in the chat what you think this should be. But anyway, so Jax had encountered some truly nasty has-chems in her time. Had encountered some truly nasty has-chems on... alien planets in her time. Gases, vapors that make your bowels crawl up out your nose. Acids that eat away your nerves before they have time to start hurting. I think we need periods in between these instead of commas. Vapors that make your bowels crawl back up out your nose. Alright, that's a bit much, isn't it? Acids that eat away your nerves before they have time to start hurting. She once saw a planet consisting entirely of voles. Hungry voles. Oh, it's so stupid. What was on the other side of this door? Most of the instruments on her ship were fried. So most of the instruments on her ship were fried. She should probably take the time to fix them before venturing outside. But Jax shrugged. She had survived certain death at least once today. Why not continue the lucky streak? I'll note that Marten Cordial does not endorse the decision-making exhibited in this broadcast. Jackson approached the door. Jackson approached the hatch. Ooh, it's a bit lost, isn't it? Approached the hatch, pulled the lever, and opened to the alien moon. And immediately an avalanche of, and immediately a mass of paper avalanched into her ship. All right, we'll leave you on that cliffhanger for a moment while I read the comments. Mosa suggests it's like quicksand that she's gone into. That would be an interesting situation. How would Jackson handle being trapped in a ship and having to find some way to escape from within the quicksand planet? That would be cool. Yeah, Advar says that she sometimes looks and doesn't look, and if it was a podcast, you couldn't get. Yeah, the feedback is most of why it's fun, I reckon. Brandon reckons a spacesuit. You'd think so. You'd think that someone with as much space experience as Jackson Spaceboots would invest in a spacesuit. I don't know if that's really her style. I don't know. Maybe there's some kind of fancy technology that they've got. Maybe she's got some, rebreather implant, or she's got some kind of cosmic ray protection, or some kind of pressure skin something. Yeah, she probably should wear a spacesuit, shouldn't she? Shush. Yeah, alright, I think the consensus is that the interactivity is kind of the point. Oh, have we got instruments instead of instruments? Do we need instruments? Okay. Yeah, Jackson is absolutely fresh out of fucks to give Brandon. That is certainly true. Yeah, maybe she presses a button on her chest like Iron Man. That's a bit too fancy though. I feel like some of the megacorps in Jackson's world have those sorts of fancy ass technology, and Jackson's whole style is sort of a repudiation of that. She likes to be old school tooth and nail Burke and Wills style spacefaring instead of the sci-fi stuff so much. Yeah, I think Steph did do some artwork of the spacesuit, so we'll have to. Oh man, the artwork, guys! The artwork is so cool. Fan art of Marten Cordial is top 2 best things, and the other best thing is also Marten Cordial fan art. So I'm gonna give that. That's great, guys. All right, so let's snow. Yeah, well, it looks like snow. I think we should compare this paper to snow in how it comes crashing through Jackson's door. But anyway, we're gonna. Actually, we're probably gonna wrap this up because it's been an hour. But all right, so what does Jackson do when she's faced with this avalanche of alien paper in her ship? Jackson blinks. See, this is something that we do. I like having the character blink as just a moment of pause and confusion, and there's probably too much of that, but I like it anyway. It is kind of a paper planet. Yes, Rego. We'll learn more. So Jackson blinks and picks up a piece of paper. It's a small slip with a handwritten note. Of course, the writing on this alien planet probably shouldn't be in a language that Jackson understands, but we're going to ignore that. Everyone's saying that this is Belinda blinked. I don't know Belinda blinked. I'll have to look that up. It's a small slip with a handwritten note. Jackson puts on her reading glasses. Jackson's got reading glasses, guys. I think that's a fun little accessory for her to have. Jackson puts on her reading glasses. The note says, Mr. Tibbles died because I forgot to... No, died is a bit much. Mr. Tibbles went lost because I forgot to close Miss Runtledge's gate when she the note says, Mr. Tibbles went lost because I forgot to close Ms. Runtledge's gate when... The note says... Mr. Tibbles went lost because I forgot to close Sandra's gate. Alright, no. Mr. Tibbles didn't run away. I hit him with my car, and I don't regret it. No. I hit him with my car. Mr. Tibbles didn't run away. I hit him with my car. In fact, I probably could have swerved and missed. But now I get to sleep through the night. Signed, Kathleen, God, names are bad. Kathleen, Bumbaditch. Kathleen, Kathleen. Jax understood nothing. She dropped the paper and picked up another. It said, I knew about the baby. I knew months before they told you. Told you. I'm sorry. What's a good gender neutral name for the ambiguity? How about like a what's a good gender neutral name? Sam. Alright, she dropped the paper and picked up another. So I knew about the baby, I knew months before they told you. I'm sorry, Sam. Jax picked up a pile and returned to her crash couch. And spent a good half hour reading. Far as she could tell, these were all regrets, prayers of a sort. She had landed on a... See, it sounds better to say planet of something rather than moon of something. She had landed on... She had crash landed on a world of guilt and regret. Regret. Okay, I think that is a good place to stop. And what we're going for is that this is an exploration of Jax's feelings about her brother Lewis, and about some of the more sort of general feelings of regret and guilt and stuff that this planet is meant to embody, and confessions, and how to respond to them. I think that's what we're gonna get at. And I think we actually will try and continue this one because I got a few ideas on how it could continue, and how Jackson might find a way to escape from this place, which I think could be really cool. Brandon suggests it was all a dream. I used to read Word Up magazine, and hey, maybe that's possible. Maybe, hey guys, meta fan theory, maybe every Marten Cordial story is just another dream in the river of chocolate dreams in the first story. Maybe that's what's really going on. I don't know. But thank you all for participating in this episode of Marten Cordial. It has been a fun time. And it is so much more fun because of you guys hanging out and participating and making suggestions, because otherwise there's no way I would remember how to say, what was it? Was it assonance? Consonants? I've already forgotten. So you guys remember the words for me. Some chats that we've missed. Oh, Ms. Dewberry. Kelly suggests as a name. I like Dewberry. I enjoy that one. Reg is not so sure about the reading glasses. I know, right? It's so very old-fashioned for someone like Jackson Spaceboots. I think that's why I like it. Rega says, I gotta check out My Dad Wrote a Porno. I have heard of that. I haven't listened to it. I'll have to check it out. No spacesuit, but reading glasses. I enjoy how ridiculous that is. Let me write down the things that I need to look up. Dad wrote a porno, and was it Belinda blinked? We'll check those out. What else is in the chat that we missed? Jack's passing out. Ask finish time. Gene, Joey, Cass. Yeah, Cass is a good name. Consonants. Yeah, that's what we're going for. I was thinking incontinence, but consonants is definitely better. Alright, cheers. Thanks, guys. Belinda blinked is My Dad Wrote a Porno. Of course. Naturally. Alright, thanks for participating, guys. We'll do another episode of this sometime soon. Hey, maybe we'll consider the idea of actually having a schedule. I know that's a pretty wild idea, but we could try doing more Marten Cordial in a week, and we'll just see if we can do something with any kind of regularity. That might be interesting. Project 70 just got here and is very confused. We'll get you up to speed, Project 70. Oh, it looks like a bunch of people got here just as it's ending. That's all right. I'll give you the 10 seconds. Actually, no, let's do a reading, all right? This is what we should do at the end of every episode. I always forget. So we're going to read the story that we just wrote, or the beginning of the story that we just wrote before we sign off. So this is the second installment, or the second revision of Jackson Spaceboots. This is a story about Jackson Spaceboots, and it goes like this. Jax was screaming towards the alien moon, and she felt strangely calm. To be sure, she'd survived more crash landings than most pilots perform actual landings. She suspected she was better at crash landing. There's so much to remember with controlled landings. Deploying the flight wheels, turning off the AC, choosing a safe landing zone, telling the passengers to buckle up. It's too much to handle. Crash landing, on the other hand, is a far quicker process, much less decision-making involved. So long as you survive, you've performed a successful crash landing. And so far, Jax has a 100% success rate. Jax learned everything she needed to know about flight from an old book. It said that the secret to flying was to throw yourself at the ground and to miss. Jax reasoned that spaceflight was even easier, because in space, there's so much to miss. With no up or down, spaceflight is just falling. The trick is to miss in the right direction. This time, the trick is to fall in the right direction. This time, however, Jax has concerns. Jax is concerned. Judging by the numbers on her nav dash, there wasn't much... Oh, we're mixing tenses. We're going to have to fix that. This time, however, Jax is concerned. Judging by the numbers on her nav dash, there wasn't much room to miss this moon. It was huge and white and inescapable. Normally, Jax would look for a body of water, or a particularly soft-looking hill, but this moon appeared featureless, without sea or sand or mercy. She couldn't reason with a giant white rock. She couldn't outsmart it. She was just going to have to toughen up and hope. She remembered an old game that she played with her brother Lewis. In the winters back home, the silver meadows filled with brown seed pods. Jax and Lou would collect them and pile them on the living room floor. Their mother would ask what the mess was for, and Jax would reply, to see which is stronger. Jax and Lou would each choose a seed pod and crush each pod against the other until one broke. The victor would then contend against a third pod, and so on until a single surviving pod reigned supreme over the mulchy mess of its competitors. And, of course, whichever sibling first chose the winning pod was deemed the most erudite of pod selectors. Plummeting towards the moon, Jax felt that she was likely the weaker seed pod. But she'd never admit that till it was over, and even then, maybe not. There had to be a way out. There was no time to rethink, no time to regret. The surface of the moon came crashing up into Jackson's face, and somehow, she didn't die. There was a noise, like the furious flapping of feathers, all around Jackson's ship. The whole ship shook and shuddered and rolled, and Jackson's limbs and hair went a-flailing. The screens were all a blur of white, and then they came to a shuddering stop. For a few moments, Jackson sat and soaked in the adrenaline. When she was sure she was finished crashing, she gingerly poked each of her limbs. It seemed that nothing was broken. She could still breathe, one lung and another. Yes, that's right. She was unscathed, or mildly scathed at most. The question was how. She looked at the window and saw a jumble of small white shapes. This wasn't rock. The surface of the moon had given way beneath her. It had cushioned her. But what was it? Jackson unbuckled and looked with distrust at the ship's hatch. What was on the other side? Whatever this moon's made of had just saved her. If she opened the door, would it kill her? Jax had encountered some truly nasty hazcams on alien planets in her time. Vapors that make your bowels crawl out your nose, acids that eat away your nerves before they have time to start hurting. She once saw a planet consisting entirely of hungry voles. What was on the other side of this door? Most of the instruments on her ship were fried. She should probably take the time to fix them before venturing outside. Scanning instruments, because it's specifically to check the hazcams or whatever. But Jax shrugged. She had survived certain death at least once today. Why not continue the lucky streak? Jackson approached the hatch, pulled the lever, and opened to the alien moon. Almost immediately, a mass of paper avalanched into her ship. Jackson blinked and picked up a piece of paper. It was a small slip with a handwritten note. Jackson put on her reading glasses. The note said, "Mr. Tibbles didn't run away. I hit him with my car. In fact, I probably could have swerved and missed, but now I get to sleep through the night. Signed, Kathleen." Jax understood nothing. She dropped the paper and picked up another. It said, "I knew about the baby. I knew months before they told you. I'm sorry. Sam." Jax picked up a pile and returned to her crash couch and spent a good half-hour reading. Far as she could tell, these were all regrets, prayers of a sort. She had crash-landed on a world of regret. So that was our story. We wrote an hour and we got this little beginning of a story. And it's 800 words. That's a bunch of words in an hour. And that's cool. Thank you all for participating. Oh yeah, we need to put in some credits for the folks who helped out. So it's by Marten Cordial, and who else was in the chat? We got Brandon, We got Rhaegar. We got Mosa, who I believe goes by Stephanie. And we got Advar, and we got 70. Who are we missing? There's definitely more. Kelly. And give us a name if there's anyone else we're missing. I think that's everyone who spoke out. Yeah, I think that's all cool. Alright, thanks guys. See you next time. Cheers. Oh, also Reject Kid.